Hey Photo World, welcome back to another episode here on TakeandTalkPics.com. This is another episode from the former podcast. Please subscribe, hit that notification bell, and join the email list. Let's get to that 1,000 subscriber marker so that way I can add a new video every single week. Enjoy. Take and Talk Pics, episode 24, featuring Jim Harmer with ImprovePhotography.com.
I just can't get it out of my head. I'm like obsessed with it.
Today we are featuring Jim Harmer. Jim is a photographer based in Caldwell, Idaho. In 2011, Jim founded ImprovePhotography.com. The site has grown to be one of the largest internet resources for photographers today. Jim also runs a YouTube channel, hosts the weekly Improve Photography podcast, and holds free workshops around the world, as well as being an author of multiple books, presentations, and video courses. Jim, welcome to Take and Talk Pics.
Glad to be here.
It's awesome to have you, and I've just scratched the surface about who you are and a little bit about what you do and have done. Can you share with Photo World more about yourself and your photography business?
Yeah, Improve Photography is a photography blog just with photography tips, pretty much whatever you want to learn in photography, we've got something there for you. And I travel all around the world doing completely free, unpaid photography workshops with readers of Improve Photography and listeners to our podcast. We have 4 photography podcasts on the Improve Photography Network now. Just covering all different kinds of photography. So it's photography learning. It's the place to nerd out with other photographers. For me personally, I do all kinds of different photography. I call myself a landscape photographer, but because everybody that reads the site is interested in different things, I end up shooting a little bit of everything.
Give them the variety, you got to cater to the audience.
Yeah, and I have the benefit of not needing to earn money directly from my photos or doing portraits and things like that. And so I can just shoot whatever sounds fun that day.
Right.
And so, yeah, I do what's fun and not necessarily what has to be marketable.
And the same thing with the totally free workshops. I read that and it blew my mind. And I just thought, oh my gosh, what a genius to give that back to his audience, give that to the readers. That's a huge thank you back to them.
Yeah, it's been really neat. We started... we did a few across the United States and in Tennessee and Florida. We've done a few, and Oregon we did one. And they started out kind of slow with a few people, and then once everybody started hearing what we were doing, now it's like a conference of photographers at some of these things, with 50 or more people at some of them, and it's just so much fun. We just, nobody's paying me. I just. If I want to go shoot somewhere, I might as well meet up with everybody. And so I will get together and just, pick a hotel. Everybody pays their own travel. We just all go together and shoot together all day long and post-process all night long. It's just so much fun. And I learn a ton of stuff from the other photographers every single time, every place I go. I pick something up from the people who are there. So it's beneficial for me too.
That's awesome. You get the community involved, and before you know it, everybody's getting to share ideas, and it's not competition you're next to, it's friends. So that's really cool. For Take and Talk Pics, we love to share the photo story, so we can talk about your photography or definitely improve photography, because that has become to be your main focus and big business end of it. But to get the inspiration flowing here for Photo World, can you share a mantra or a quote that you try to live by or have implemented into the way you run your business?
Well, I guess more on the business end, less on the photography end, but it's the heights by men reached and kept were not attained by sudden flight, but they, while their companions slept, were toiling upwards in the night. I'm not much of a poem guy, but there's something about that one that really always kind of spoke to me, because it kind of tells the story of my life that I really just love throwing all of my energy into whatever project I'm doing at the time. And so I see that so often that, when I started Improve Photography, I was writing to Nobody. I would write a blog post and no one read it. And I would stay up late, and after law school, I would stay up late and write another blog post, and nobody read it. And I would release a podcast and nobody downloaded it. And then one by one by one, that audience started to build. And so, when you're building a business as a portrait photographer, as a photography instructor, any kind of business, it rarely is the kind of thing where you just open the doors and floods of people hoard your way throwing money at you.
Right.
It starts out slow and it's painful. And most people are watching TV at night. But for the person who's willing to put in that effort just over and over consistently, the guy who's not willing, who doesn't just sit reading photo blogs every day, but actually gets out and plans an epic shoot, that's the guy that's really going to be successful. And so I've just seen that so much in my life that the times that I put in the hard work in the beginning, boy, you can reap some nice benefits later.
Doing the work, there's a book by Stephen Pressfield called Do the Work. And it reminds us of the most simple task. If you actually sit down and do it, that's the hardest part, is sitting down to do it. Using our ambition and remembering. And like you said, it's really hard when you post something and nobody's there to even read it. But keep going and it's paid off over time. It's that marathon instead of the sprint. There's no get-rich-quick scheme, not with photography and not with most businesses. I think that's valuable for Photo World to hear. So you were an attorney before.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're a podcaster, blogger, photographer. What sparked your interest in photography enough to pursue it as your career?
It was really random. When I was in college for my undergrad, I was in Rexburg, Idaho, and it's cold there. And so I wanted a hobby. And literally I just Googled hobbies for guys. I was like, I am bored. It is cold. I need a hobby, something to entertain myself. And I thought, photography? Sure. And so I walked into the garage and I sold all my skis, guns, whatever old hobby stuff I had that I wasn't really using at the time. And I bought a little Canon Rebel and just started learning a little bit on my own. During law school, I taught adult ed classes at night in photography, and I wasn't the expert photographer or anything, but I was just sharing the things that I knew, and it was mostly retired people who just wanted to learn the basics of their camera, so I taught this and that. I did some weddings and portrait stuff to earn extra money during law school, and I got tired of explaining things every 6 weeks to the new session of people that would come into my adult ed class. It's like, what's an aperture? And then 6 months later, somebody says, what's an aperture? And it's like, oh man, I got to do this again. And so I started the blog just to kind of create some resources that I could point people to instead of explaining it again. Pretty soon I noticed it was tens and hundreds and thousands and millions of people then coming to the website. And once I released some coaching and training courses and stuff on there, then I said, well, I just finished law school, just sacrificed my life for 3 years for this. I passed the bar, but at that time it was like, no way. I love photography. It makes me happy, and it was earning a good income as well.
You Googled hobbies for guys, and it turned your life around. I mean, who has that kind of story? That's amazing. And we know that, there are ups and downs in the photo business. You probably see it from a lot of your readers and things they are saying. Can you share with us a time where you had to learn the hard way, Jim? Something that maybe it was a failure moment in your business, in your blog, or just the teaching you were doing. Something where you had to learn the hard way, but you're better for it now.
I'd say one that I think a lot of people are going to be able to identify with is I wasn't an expert when I started. And I mentioned that, but I think every photographer hopefully has to go through that. Some people are just kind of have their pie in the sky of their skill level. Yeah. But most photographers go through that stage where you're not an expert, but you do love photography. And so I would put my work online, and just for whatever reason, the website grew so quickly, especially our Facebook group, that there would be 10,000, 20,000 people on the Facebook group. And I would, go out at night and take this picture and be in love with it and be so proud of myself. And I put it up on Facebook, and it would just get hammered. I mean, just killed. Everybody was just ripping me to shreds over every single photo. And that's really tough. Like, everybody likes to think that you have thick skin, but it kind of does bother you a lot, and it
Yeah.
really bothered me. And eventually it got to the point that it was like, I just can't put my work out there anymore. I'll just let it collect dust on my hard drive. And that was a very difficult time, and it continued for years. Just in the last 30 days, I've been called a racist, a homophobe, and all kinds of different words about how horrible of a photographer I am.
Oh my.
But the racist and homophobe were ones that just came so far out of left field that it was like, what are we even talking about? I'm talking about photography. How am I going to be a racist? It's crazy, I mean, and yesterday I was a thief too.
Oh, of
And
course.
it's just madness what people say online, people that don't even know you. It's just crazy. And so it's fun to put your work, your business, or your photos online. But there are going to be critics, crazy critics. I mean, they just come up with the wildest stuff. And when you have nearly 1 million people following you on different social media outlets, it's just statistics. You have a certain amount of them that are just psychopathic. And so it has taken me a long time to get over that, but it was a real detriment to my business and a real detriment to just my enjoyment of it. And finally, I think what finally turned the corner for me is just putting everything in perspective. It's like 1 million people would not be following me online if what I was doing was so horrible.
Right.
If I hear consistent things of people saying, hey, you're really boring on your podcast, you need to make it more interesting, then, hey, I better implement that. But when it's one random comment here or there and you look at the vast majority and things are good, you kind of just have to keep on keeping on and let the haters hate.
Yeah, at that point, it's not about...
Sorry, that was a little Taylor Swift right there.
That's fine. I love her music.
Do you want me to sing that part?
I think we should. Oh, no, it's in my head. So when you're considering like all these different comments and stuff, it's not about building thick skin over time. It's that you're, like you said, you're weighing the differences and going, okay, I'm just going to ignore that. Like I'll read it and see that, hey, people think I'm a racist and a homophobe from a podcast or a picture, but I don't even know how that's possible. Moving on.
It is weird because it's like, I was talking about photography. What does this have to do with anything? And like I said that a product was made in China.
Oh.
And that was what was racist. I was like,
out.
Ooh, baby. What?
Many products are made in China. I think that's okay.
Crazy.
When we're talking about your business, the way you have it modeled out and you have a process, there's systems in place, there has to be, or else we'd all just go crazy if we didn't have systems in place. But when you're running through each new endeavor, each new section, putting out your Lightroom preset package each year that you do, things of that nature, what important practice do you have with your business or your photography that you implement in just about every single system or job?
I'm not a very organized person. In fact, I'm really bad at it. But there's one thing that I've done that's been really, really helpful since two things that I've been doing for about the last year. One, I heard from somebody else, I can't remember who to give them credit, but it is a 30-minute hourglass. I'm holding one in my hand right now.
Very nice.
And it's been really helpful. I guess it's not an hourglass if it's 30 minutes, right? But it's you know what I'm talking about. It's a 30-minute sand timer anyway. And when I have something come up that I really don't feel like I want to do, I just flip over the 30-minute sand timer, and when it's over, the job is over, whether it's done or not done. And so if I have a different process for my email now. My personal assistant goes through it and just sends me the highlights in one email that I can just knock out. But, if it's something like email or whatever, I'll just say, oh, man, this is not fun, but I really do need to do this. If I put it off, it's going to hang over my head all day long, and I'll just find easy but not that important work to do.
Right.
And so I just grab the sand timer, flip it over, and it's like I'm just going to bust out whatever I can in 30 minutes, and then I'm done. And just knowing that the time is going to end and I don't have to spend all day doing this has been really helpful. The second thing is a to-do list, but I do my to-do list a little bit different. I just keep it on the Notes app on my iPhone and Mac and stuff. And I just make a list of everything that needs to be done. And then each day I'll just start at the top and go down. But my rule for my to-do list is I'm not allowed to do anything that's not on the to-do list. So if I sit down at work, the website can be down. Anything can happen, and I will do nothing if it's not on the to-do list. And so even if something urgent, like the server just went down, I add it to my to-do list, I'll finish it, and then I put it on the done list. But I think that's helpful, because then it kills my distractions. Because if on my list is not go check Pixoto and see how your photos are doing, if they're getting lots of likes, I'm not allowed to do that right now. I have to only do what's on the list. I can reorganize it during the day, I can change things, but it must be on the list if it's going to be done at all. And since I've done that, a lot more has gotten done in my business.
It's just creating those priorities. And I do the same thing with a to-do list at night. Doing it at the end of the night or end of the day before you go to bed, you're kind of letting go of what's weighing on your shoulders of what you still need to do so that we can get good sleep and then wake up, accomplish that, and do the same thing the next night. Making those lists, and that is a great system to have in place. So Photo World out there, start making your list of what you can do for the week, for the day, for that hour. Get that 30-minute hourglass. I love the contradiction there, but go grab that sand timer and start giving yourself the space to get it done. Like Jim said, those 30 minutes, whether you're done or not, you're done. And I really think that's a really good tool to use.
Got to add one on there. And
For
that
sure.
is yearly planning, especially for running a business, a photography business, or just as a hobbyist. I find it makes such a huge difference when you make a list of goals for the year. And so I have my to-do list, and right under it is my year goal list. And so I like, twice a week, I look at my to-do list and I was like, okay, what can I just cut out that's not really going to help me get to the year goal list? And that makes a huge difference. There have been, for example, last year in my business, I looked at what happened in December, and I just kind of did the year in review, and I was like, we've had good results. We've been really fortunate on the financial side and everything, but I didn't deserve that. I did a lot of stuff that seemed fun at the time, but it was not the most important things to do in the business. And so I started January, and I spent 2 full weeks just planning the year out, what projects I want to get done. And it's been so much more productive by having the clear goal of what we're going to do. And I think photographers in general, even hobbyists, need to do more planning. I see when I do portfolio reviews for students, people who buy it from our site, buy a portfolio review, I look through them, and often it's like, daytime photo in India, daytime photo in Germany, and you can tell they're just kind of going randomly, snapping a pic here and there. Now that's fun. I love to travel, and I love to just snap little pics of whatever looks interesting as I go. But if we're talking about just like, I'm going to go make an awesome photo, it takes a lot more planning than that. At least for the way that I shoot, I would say 90% or better of the photos in my portfolio were really, really planned out. I mean, I got an idea, I planned a model for it, or I went to a specific location to get this. My wife's a great drawer. I can't draw at all. So I have my wife sit down with my wife, and I'll just have her draw what's kind of in my mind, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's a terrible composition. Let's try again, and we'll redo things. And I think a lot of planning ends up with much better results.
We have a wide range of photographers listening. Jim, can you please share with Photo World one thing that you think could lead to growth and success in a photography business, regardless of their current level?
Well, I hope this doesn't seem self-indulgent, because we do offer portfolio reviews, but I don't care where you get it from. Go to a photographer locally, somebody you trust, somebody who's a lot better than you, and get a portfolio review all the time. Here's an example. It just happened to me. I shoot a ton of photography, travel around, and one of the photographers on a trip that I went on recently had a higher score photo than mine on Pixoto, and I love Pixoto. It's like my little addiction. Pixoto.com, it's a free website. They just kind of rate your photos. Anyway, and I was like, I hate that. And so I looked and looked and looked through his photos and I saw, what is it? And I realized I was leaving too much dead space on the edges of my photos. I needed to just crop into not square, but maybe like 4x3 or something. I just all my compositions had a little bit too much dead space of nothing really happening. And so that really, really helped me. And so, that's great that I could figure that out by myself in this particular situation. But usually it's really hard to learn things by yourself. It's a lot easier if you'll let somebody else, somebody good, just glance through your photos and give honest feedback of what you're doing. So I would say, like, if you want to just improve your photography overnight, go get a portfolio review. And when you get a portfolio review, don't take everything at face value. Some people just shoot different than you do. And they may just have a different viewpoint. That's okay. You don't have to implement everything the person says. But keep in mind that a fresh eye looking at your work is worth a lot more than your eye that's already kind of jaded and used to what you produce.
Jim's too nice of a guy to do this, Photo World, but go to him and get your critique done there, because he's telling you go anywhere and get it, but he's got good stuff to say and you've seen a lot for sure. So, go to Improve Photography and get your portfolio review there or anywhere else. But when you ask for a critique, honestly ask for that critique. Go into it knowing that you can hear anything and you cannot be offended by it. It's just one opinion from another side. But that's going to help you learn. So take the good stuff out of it, be real with yourself and swallow that pill and go, you know what? Oh, that was tough to take, but I'm going to do it and I'm going to improve in these areas. So just do that. When you go in for a critique, it's really difficult because we kind of go in, oh, this is my work. This is my baby. I made this. And then it can get shut down pretty quick. And at the end of the day, you have to go, that's not the end all. This is now a stepping stone. What can I do from here? So Photo World, get those critiques wherever you choose. Go into it with an open mind and come out with it with as much good, even from the negative side.
Hey, and a tip, I've done thousands of portfolio reviews over the last couple of years, and one thing that really hurts people's ability to benefit from it is making excuses for your work while you're getting the review. So all the time I'll be talking to somebody, and I'm not a real brash kind of person. And so I like to say things nicely, frank, but on it, but nice. But still people, as I'm talking, I'll say, this is a good photo, but the lighting just isn't great. I mean, it's boring. The lighting's boring, and people will start to make excuses even they don't notice it. They'll say things like, "Oh yeah, but the story is I had just gotten off the airplane and I was just going through this spot one time, and it was just not in the best light, but I made the best of it." And that's fine. Hey, you only had one shot at it, wasn't perfect light, then pass it up.
Right.
But making that excuse kind of gives you permission to keep shooting in bad light. But what I'm really saying is this photo isn't good enough to be in your portfolio because it has bad light. And so even if you couldn't have done it, well, go find a place you can control the light and let's shoot it. Or let's go back to that spot now that you know it's a cool spot and let's shoot it in better light. Don't make any excuses for, I didn't have much time. I didn't have good light. I didn't speak the language, and so I couldn't ask the person to smile. Whatever it is, no excuses. Just accept the photos how they are, and then go fix them.
I couldn't have said that better myself. It's really hard to create a portfolio, not just gathering images, but deciding what's worthy. And that's a really good point what you brought up there. We as photographers, as business owners, as just people, we have these little light bulb moments, these times that hit us. And I feel like with the photography world, there's many that kind of stand out as points along the way. Can you share with Photo World a story, a time when one of these things happened to you where a light bulb went off and you knew what to do next?
Yeah, well, I guess while we're talking about lighting, one that kind of hit me is when I was in Florida and I was still, I was maybe a year into photography. There was this spot that I really liked. It was just this cool building, and I had taken some daylight pictures there and stuff, and it was neat. I really liked the way that it looked. And then I went back at night one time, and it just happened that I got a little bit lucky because there was no wind, and so the water was flat in front of the building, and the lights on the street, all the city lights were turned on and stuff. And it was just absolutely electric to see that same spot that I had seen during the day that was cool, but just not, I don't know, the photo wasn't quite there. And then to see it at nighttime, and it was just this unbelievably gorgeous spot. And that was the first time that I sold a photo to somebody that I didn't know. People, nobody wants to buy your photo when you're new. Then friends and family say, hey, I might want that in my living room or something, and start buying it. This is the first time that I sold one to somebody I'd never met before, and that was pretty cool. And it just really solidified for me the fact that the lighting really is everything in the photo. And if the lighting is bad, it's going to be a bad photo. If the lighting is just not bad, but not good, it's just normal, there's nothing really happening with the light, then sometimes you can pull out an okay photo, but it's usually just good. And if you get lighting that's interesting, it takes anything you do up about 10 notches. And so then the question that I always get then is, okay, what is good lighting? And usually I'll just say it's any lighting that's different or interesting or weird. If it's weird, interesting, different light than what you see all the time, that's what we're going for. So why doesn't your portrait look good in the middle of the day when you take a picture of your kid running out in the park? Well, because that's how you always see your kid running around in the park. But it would look totally different if you had like 5 softboxes in there putting beautiful golden light on him everywhere as he's running. We don't see that normally. It's weird because you've created it. It's beautiful. Now, you can definitely get just too weird of light, but you get the idea. Where the idea is changing the light from what we normally see. It's normal to just walk outside and see a landscape when you're traveling, hiking. It's not normal to take a night photo because usually it's too dark for the human eye to even expose anything. So when you do a long exposure and you can expose a night scene, everything about the lighting is different. So it's just magical in a photo. So I guess what makes good lighting is just different from the norm.
Yeah, when it comes to lighting and just like different time of day, there's a photographer that stands out to me, a friend of mine, Tom Phelan, and he does this night photography that is just unreal. It is so beautiful. I haven't seen a whole lot like it, and he just masters it. So Photo World, take a look at his stuff. But it's just finding the light and really just start looking for it. It's out there, and yeah, you can shape it on your own and develop it, but just look. That's how you start to see, you have to see it first to know how to capture it next. For this next one, Jim, it's going over the I made it moment. I don't really believe that photographers or in our businesses we have one high point, that moment where it's like, oh, I made it. I'm the photographer. This is great. Because the second we plateau and say that's it, we did it, I think there's just failure after that. You'd only go down because you can't settle in this business, in this pursuit of photography and that mindset. So can you highlight one I made it moment for you where it kind of showed up as a nice validation of what you're doing?
I would say the first time that I was traveling and somebody on the street stopped me and said, "Hey, I think I know you. I read your blog." That was pretty fun. That was pretty cool. The very first time that happened, that was pretty neat. I don't know if I can say I've made it, but it was cool nonetheless. It was something that it went into a journal entry.
Very nice. Very nice. Jim, during your photography career so far, what is the best advice you have ever received?
Boy, I don't know. That's a tough one. Maybe to... I would say this. I would say to put business and family in their proper perspective. I've always been really careful to not spend too much time at work, and that's easy for me because I love my family. My wife and kids are awesome, and so it's not too much of a temptation to not spend enough time with them. But quitting right at 4:30, I talked to several people who are self-employed just as I started doing this full-time, and all of them said, you got to have quitting time every day. And so no matter what's happening, 4:30, I really am done, has made me happier. And also, I don't know how many times I've seen that It's like I'm really busy at work with this project that I'm just dying to get done. Even if I'm liking the project, I'm just dying to finish this. Um, you get not burned out in general with my business because I love what I do, but you kind of get burned out of working so much. And so sometimes if I look at the day and I'm like, I just didn't accomplish that much, I just don't work at all the next day. The next day, I'm taking the kids out on the boat. We're going fishing. And no matter how much I was loving that project or wanting to work on it, just quitting at certain times and just going and being a human being, and certainly every day quitting at a reasonable time is helpful. I worked my butt off when I was starting the business, but that didn't keep away from family time. It was as soon as my wife says it's time for bed, she'd go to bed and I'd stay up and keep working, Find times outside of family time to work on the business.
Very good advice. And I think it's really awesome when people start to make those decisions, put that system in place, because for me, a lot of things come down to having a priority list and, taking the time to make that system happen. So family's a priority for sure for pretty much everybody who has one. So make sure you're giving that the attention it needs. It can't be overlooked because of that project or these few emails. Those things can wait till another day. It's not the end of the world or anything, so I really appreciate hearing that reminder and getting that back out to Photo World to kind of take a break. If you had to start your photography business all over, you have the same gear and the same knowledge that you currently have today, what would you do first to start a new photography business?
Well, when I started, it was easier to get attention just as general photography. It's not a crowded industry. There are just a lot of us who love photography, and a lot of people talking photography and a lot of people taking great photos. And so I think it was a little bit more open when I started and a little bit less crowded. And so if I were starting today, I would probably focus on one thing specifically and have a shtick that I'm working on.
Yeah, a lot of people talking about photography and taking photos. That's kind of where I came up with Take and Talk Pics as the name of the show, because that's what we all do. So it seemed very fitting. Do you have an app or an internet resource that you use that you think Photo World can benefit from knowing about? And Improve Photography, we'll have all that on the show notes page, but if you got something else. Yeah,
well, I've mentioned Pixoto. I'm going to sound like I'm sponsoring their show, but I'm not. It's just a website. It's free, but I really am kind of addicted to it. So it's, like many websites like 500px and stuff, they'll do kind of an image rank. They'll rank your photo, but all of them have one downfall. The more popular you are, the better you do, because more people are looking at your photo. Mm-hmm. Just like on Flickr, if you got a ton of followers on Flickr, well, yeah, you're going to get a lot of likes on your photos. And so they don't do as good of a job, even if they have high quality work, they don't do as good a job of surfacing photos from photographers, whether they're well known or not. And so I'm always in search of places where I can find kind of an equalizer to see how my work really is stacking up against others. Because wherever I go, I'm going to have a followers, and so I can't see it on an equal playing field. And for me, that's Pixoto. Anybody has the same chance of succeeding as somebody who's well known. The way it works is you submit a photo, and then other photographers vote. It'll just show two photos side by side, and you just click on which one you prefer. And you have to vote on at least 10 photos to be able to submit another of your own. And so because it's other photographers voting, and they're just saying, whose photo do you prefer, have no idea whose picture you're even voting on, it's pretty even, and it ends up giving a very honest look at your work. If you can't get a portfolio review, then do this. This will at least give you an idea. It'll actually slap a number on your photo, and so you can see, is this 1 in 50? Out of 50 photos submitted, this is 1 in 50. This is 1 out of 100, 1,000, 1 out of 1,000,000 from other photographers. So it's really, really cool. It takes a little bit to get used to. Most people that I recommend it to, try it for a little bit and then get frustrated because they get low numbers. But don't. You can't just quit and say, oh, this website's crappy. It's right. In fact, a lot of times I've submitted the same photo like a week apart just to see how good the ranking system is. It's always within like 1% of the score. Like, very cool. It's really cool. So I love that. As far as improved photography stuff, check out our podcast, the Improved Photography Podcast. We have Photo Taco, that's a quick 5-minute podcast of just quick photography tips that people have been loving. Portrait Session podcast for portrait photographers, and also Thoughts on Photography, that's our interview show.
Yeah, and you can find all of those right on Improved Photography. There's a podcast tab there. It's got all the 4 shows, a little description, and then links out to get them on iTunes and Stitcher. I've never heard of Pixoto until today, but I feel like you just gave me something that's going to burn up a lot of my time, and it's going to be awesome. I'll love it. And not even so much for putting my own images up there, but for the comparison side by side of just choosing images and looking at them, because I feel like I get better the more work I see. That's just another good way to look at that resource too. Jim, other than a camera body, what is one piece of gear that you could not live without?
A YN 560 flash. I like the YN 560s that cost $70. I've used all the flashes from the cheapest that there is up to the $2,000 studio strobes. I use the $70 flash. The YN 560 is, I own like a bucket of them in the closet next to me. I use them for everything. I'm kind of the guy that starts with okay, one flash, I'm just going to keep this simple. And it's 5 minutes later, they're 10 strobes turned on. I love being able to play with the light. It's so much fun. And so a YN 560, I'd have a hard time doing photography without that.
Very cool. Yeah, those are nice little workhorses too, and they have a really sturdy build, and they're pretty powerful for what they are. They're full manual, correct?
Well, they have the YN 560 is full manual, which actually I believe to be the easiest way to do flash. Mm-hmm. Not cheaper, easier.
Right.
I can afford the more expensive flash. I like the manual. It's just easier to use, even for beginners. But Yongnuo also makes ETTL and high-speed sync flashes as well for not a whole lot money more.
Jim, can you please share with Photo World one parting piece of guidance, the best way that we can reach you, whether it's your website or some sort of social media, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been good to chat. For me, the best piece of guidance that I can leave with you is to go out and make one picture. So that's usually where after you get through all the beginner stuff and you kind of get to I'm a solid intermediate photographer. Maybe you've even sold some, maybe you've done a little portrait photography, whatever. There are a lot of people in that swath of intermediate photographers. And if you want to get up to the really higher levels, I see that people are starting to really hit their stride once they plan out and make a photo. So like we were talking about earlier, go, look through 1 million photos on 500px and Pixoto. Just spend every waking minute for the next week just looking at photos, and try not to even think about too much, but just favorite ones randomly as something's wow, that was pretty cool. Just click that favorite button. At the end of the week, look through your photos and you'll start to see trends that's you know what? I never really thought I was a sports portrait guy, but these sports portraits were awesome, and that really spoke to me. And then, think about it. Just sit down for a while and say, all right, basketball. I want to take a picture of something basketball. I always liked basketball. And then I want you to just go crazy thinking about it, spending so much time working on an idea for it. And you say, maybe I'm going to find a local high school athlete and I want to do something totally different. I'm going to go to the high school gym and we're going to turn off all the lights in the gym, and I'm going to get a ladder and have him sit on top of the rim. And I'm going to take a picture from behind him, looking out over the dark gym, and I'm just going to shoot a couple speed lights to illuminate the stadium, and he's looking over his domain. Whatever it is, whatever your idea is, come up with something that's totally your own, as if you were a painter and you had to totally come up with everything there. And once you get a taste for that, of making your photo, even if it's a landscape, same process goes on. And once you've gone through that process a couple times, even if you prefer to shoot off the cuff, once you've put that much effort into a photo, that's the hockey stick where you see people in their progress really starting to shoot up. To find me, just improvephotography.com.
Excellent. Jim, I cannot thank you enough for your time today and sharing such great value. Photo World thanks you, and happy shooting.
Thanks.
Are you looking for a way to make your images pop to that next level? Head to takeandtalkpics.com, go to the affiliates page, and from there you will see Free Vault Photography products. We have worked out a special deal with Free Vault Photography products so you can get 15% off your next purchase. Just enter Take and Talk 15. Spell it out, Take and Talk, then the number 15. Hey Photo World, I hope you enjoyed that episode today. The interview went so well with a lot of great information. Be sure to tune in next time where we feature another photographer and telling their journey.